It's Friday, Feedback Friday, the feedback-iest day of the week. It's Feedback Friday. I'm recording this on Wednesday because that's when I had the time to do it. And I feel like I've been hit by a bus today. I don't know why, but so I got out the Punisher shirt. It makes me feel better. And like part of it is like I don't wear this out a lot anymore because people get the wrong idea. I'm just a nerd. But yeah, that sort of is relevant. But there were a lot of really well thought out comments this week, especially on Monday's video. Tuesday's video were kind of a garbage fire of like weird sexual harassment comments. I ended up just deleting all of them because like this is just a fucking troll. It's like, what the fuck? But that I was about to say that's the reality of being a woman on the internet, but that's being anyone on the internet. I still do not for the life of me understand why people do that. It's not up to me to understand. Let's get into the comments. There won't be a ton of flow in this because I couldn't figure out common themes. Just sometimes I like to share interesting ideas. Some of them were like, okay, it sort of confirms a theory I had. But let's do help support this channel and we'll get into it. Help support this channel. Become a monthly patron. Patreon.com/LeannaK. Or buy a one-time Leanna Care session for someone can use it but can't afford it. Coffee.com/LeannaK. Slurring again. New. Invisaligner. Thirsty as hell too. But so forgive that. Let's get into it. Okay. Starting with this comment. Seems like a lot of the people on both sides of the political spectrum follow the philosophy of censorship is bad, and also it isn't censorship when it blocks things I don't like or don't personally affect me. And I shared this comment because this is something that I have really tried to avoid in my own thinking, because working in the media, you know, I started at the age of 9. And the understanding of content standards, there are certain things you just can't say and can say and whatnot in certain mediums. It sort of is just a reality that you have to navigate. And I kind of see it as it's not good, it's not bad, it just is. I think that, you know, content standards that allow people to avoid content that they may choose to not engage with while allowing the content to exist, I think those are good systems. Content standards that decide for people what content they're allowed to consume as adults and what content they're not allowed to consume as adults, that's the stuff I have a problem with. And I consider that more a curation approach than a censorship approach. The problem we have now is the amount of content on various social media sites is so massive that you have a whole bunch of people going, oh, well, we can never possibly hire enough humans to oversee all this stuff, and they're throwing up their hands and not even trying. And I'm sorry, we can do better than it being impossible to get any human to talk to at any meta service, so Facebook, Instagram, and so on. A lengthy waiting period is one thing, but it being nearly impossible is another. There was a news story on CBC where Instagram nuked a high school teacher's account totally wrongly. Absolutely, it was totally in error. And she couldn't get anyone to listen to her until CBC News got involved. That's a problem. And I think that the regulation we should really be focusing on is that element of these companies. There needs to be a way to actually set up a way to talk to a person when there is a problem. Even if it's a lengthy wait, having a person there is significant. It just, well, we're going to tell you we're shutting your account down and there's absolutely nothing you can do to find out why it happened. That's ridiculous. And that's the same level playing field for everybody. Now, is it more expensive? Sure it is. And does it mean there might be fewer social media companies? Oh, perish the thought, right? Ugh. The fact that when I do Twitch, I have to post on Twitter. Well, I don't have to, but to get all the sort of text-based things, it's Twitter and Blue Sky and Threads. And I'm like, why am I doing this? And social media doesn't draw you, like, it's not something where you draw people to your content on things like Instagram and TikTok. No, that's the content. Those services don't like you clicking outside of it. Facebook doesn't like you clicking to an external site. So TikTok's the point. Instagram's the point. And my God, I freaking hate it. I hate it. So, thank you for the comment. There were multiple guys who commented basically of the form they don't see why there needed to be this involvement in not safe for work games because, you know, guys themselves are recognizing their garbage and just slop pumped out for quick cash. You know, one guy said, I played Hunipop years ago and I still got them on the Steam recommendations. And I said to him, you know, thank God that my Steam recommendations are informed by my obsession with games like RimWorld and Satisfactory and Prison Architect, because I don't get any of this shit. But the fact that, you know, reviews of these games, they call them like crappy edgelord games, that it's just, there has to be something more than shock value to bring in a meaningful number of sales. And yeah, that's a fair point. I keep saying we need to stop centering the bad men. I'll say it again. I mean, there's always going to be a subset of society that is just fucked up and lost. And I do think that we can have off-ramps, or shall we say on-ramps, for those people to sort of reintegrate in a more healthy way. But them constantly being the focus, I think, sends a message to guys that there's no reason to try to be a good person. They're always going to be judged by those standards. And God knows I feel that some days. Like, when I'm just being called a stupid liar and all that stuff, I wonder, why do I bother just wading into certain things? Because I want people to know that, hey, I'm going to tell you what I think, even if it's unpopular. Why do I bother? There's no benefit to it. Though somebody did, like, I don't know how you do it, but they tipped me like $2 on YouTube, basically for my consistency. So, okay, that's a bit of a reward. And that, I mean, that stuff does help. Because, you know, more and more I get called ugly and fat and all this stuff. I'm like, why do I even fucking bother doing 10 minutes of makeup in the morning? Like, why the fuck do I bother? And I know that's not the majority opinion. I'm talking about this now because I get why people just go, what's the point? It does all feel very pointless when there's this much abuse out there. It just makes you tired and makes you feel like, well, there's no way to get it right, so who cares if I get it wrong? And that's something that, you know, that's worth talking about and being honest about the effects so that other people who do feel that can go, okay, if other people can continue to try, so can I. I hope that made sense. Because the next comment is also about edgelordiness, but this made me feel better about my own reaction to Larian games, because they said, maybe it's just Regency bias, I don't know what that is, or just how irony, sarcasm, poison most things are nowadays, but having replayed Divinity Original Sin 2 and Baldur's Gate 3, I can't shake the feeling all the edginess, sexualized content, or even the games themselves are some kind of elaborate meta joke a la Freddy Got Fingered. The sarcastic undertone to the narration, along with the arcs, romances of like half the characters, especially Shadowheart, Asterion, and borderline joke character the Dark Urge, and knowing the changes to those characters through development gave me the vibe the developers were pointing and laughing at anyone who wasn't filtering everything in-game through multiple layers of irony or into a joke like they were. That made me feel better, because I really felt I could not play the Dark Urge run seriously. I couldn't. It became pure jokes. I mean, I deliberately tried to break the game on the Dark Urge run. I mean, I played as a cleric. I didn't know what the Dark Urge actually was, but I'm like, we're just gonna... I had like some idea that it was going to be edgy. And so I played my character as a cleric of Mystra, just for the hilarity of romancing Gale in that way. And I was a big hairy half-orc, which was fucking hilarious. But the idea that you can fake being a cleric of another deity just doesn't make any sense. And I mean, it was so dumb. And I admit it was hilarious, but you know, some people do really get into it. And I just want... That is my concern, because I did get the feeling that a lot of the stuff was kind of meta jokes or irony. And the pointing and laughing quality did bother me, because for some people, Baldur's Gate 3 was their first game of that type, of like a CRPG, and they were playing it straight. And I think that, you know, there's Asterion and there's every other character in that game, which Asterion's writer just seemed to pour so much into that. And despite him being Froofy Elf Vampire, not just Froofy Vampire, not just Froofy Elf Vampire, there really was this sort of underlying, very serious abuse story, way over the top abuse story, but abuse story. And it was like tonally very, very serious one minute and super goofy the next. And for the life of me, I took, until, you know, I sat with this comment, didn't understand why I'm okay with the tonal shifts in the Death Stranding games, which, yeah, it's all over the place. Some shit is straight up goofy, and other stuff is really very gripping and moving. I couldn't figure out why that's fine, but Baldur's Gate 3 just felt very cynical and kind of mean, and Divinity Original Sin 2 was even worse for me. I couldn't finish that game. It was so... I don't like this gaming table. I'm gonna leave. You know, there's a lack of humanity there, and that might be it, but there's a second part to this comment that might also inform why I felt that way. To tie it in the topic at hand, an argument I keep hearing as to why more women LGBT associated content like romantasy or the stuff in Baldur's Gate 3, etc. are okay, is that the sexual content is like Looney Tunes is to violence, too absurd and abstract to the point it registers as funny instead of sexual, and everyone goes in understanding that, so there is no possibility of harm, whereas content associated with men is inherently harmful because it focuses on simulating sexual acts. Avoiding cognitive dissonance by avoiding cognition is a valid solution, I guess. And yeah, that's part of it, is there's no Like, I mean, there are relationships in Death Stranding, but there's no sex. And I actually come at it from the types of relationships and the relationship toxicity that is so normalized everywhere, not just in media, but in the real world. To me, that's a bigger problem than watching, say, porn, because there is a certain element that everyone sort of knows that porn is idealized, whereas when we talk about gritty and realistic and subverting expectations and this, that, the next thing. And I hate going back to Last of Us 2, but this is a shining example. Like, that absolutely useless sex scene with Abby was, I'm like, what? This, it still adds nothing. And they wrapped it in this sheen of good peopleness. And, oh no, this is good for women. If you don't like this game, you hate women. And that's the part I really have an issue with. I mean, going back to the original comment of, if I like it and they get rid of it, well, then it's censorship. If I don't like it and they get rid of it, well, then it's okay. And I do think there's a certain amount of this game content, especially when it comes to guilting and shaming people into certain things like polyamory, of, oh, well, if you can't communicate and you don't have an open mind, well, it's probably not for you. That kind of crap, which is what came out of Halson's mouth. And it may very well have been parody. It sure felt like it to me, but the problem isn't the game. The problem is how all the hot take games press pieces were like, bear sex and that kind of shit. Like, it's not the game itself. It's the commentary around this stuff and the fact that shameless shit just works. I can't blame the developers, but I miss my good old earnest Baldur's Gate pure hero runs. And I personally thought that was part of the essential DNA of the franchise that got lost. And I can't do anything about it. I'm not, going to pieces over it, but it's not my favorite thing, and I'm enjoying Death Stranding 2 a lot more. And I think that part of the problem in gaming communities is that, first of all, the anti-male shit is just the self-loathing of developers and journalists. They're like, well, if I'm like this, everybody's like this. But I also do think that it is rewarded in a lot of ways. And part of that was the Xbox marketing strategy of centering, douche bro college guys with the really expensive hat on sideways or backwards, instead of, the guys who actually play a lot of games and not just Madden and Call of Duty. And now it's like League of Legends and Grand Theft Auto 5, it's all artificial. And I do see the issue with guys going, but that stereotype's not me. Oh, you just don't know it, right? That's not cool. It's not cool, because we're supposed to be fact driven when we report, and that's not it. Somebody else, I love this. The archetype I've always used to describe the modern build of women in video games is Jennifer Carpenter's Deb Morgan and Dexter. Straight brown hair, big eyes, petite but athletic build, small breasts. The commenter says, which works fine for me because that's my physical preference regarding appearance. But even I'm sick of that being the prevalent archetype, which is why I find it amusing when people argue that I only prefer the real original Lara Croft over the new one because she's a male sexual fantasy. She's not my fantasy. Physically, I find the new one more attractive. The real Lara Croft was a badass. She solved puzzles, kicked ass, fought beings who were borderline deities, and sure, she used her sexuality to get what she wanted sometimes, but hey, if you got it, flaunt it. And I agree. I mean, okay, the new Lara Croft looks more like a human, so definitely reads as more attractive and less cartoony. Agreed there. Even though my problem is every time especially female characters who are more my type physically, they get accused of being woke. And I'm like, no, I just think black ladies are pretty. And I get accused of being racist for that too. I can't freaking help it, you know? And that's not it. Like, there's different things. I'm all over the place with this stuff, but I'll be like, you know, she's kind of cute. Oh, this game is woke. And it's exactly the things. It's like, oh, thank God, someone who looks different, you know? Variety. Woo, I'm so tired. No, it's not woke. Some people actually like that. I mean, I thought, blanking on her name now, from Alan Wake 2. I thought she was freaking gorgeous. And people scream about the game being woke. Like, holy friggin' shit, can we not? And, I mean, then there's the fact that, you know, guys that are more my type end up being the villain characters, which made me find, and I do agree, the character of the original Lara Croft is certainly more interesting than the modern one. But yeah, graphics have gotten a lot better. And the whole, guys that are more kind of, interesting looking to me end up in the villain roles. This comment kind of ties in here. I've personally started noticing that I have a similar blind spot for in the wrong characters. In my case, it's emotionally distant and or manipulative mothers. Stella from Hell of a Boss. Yeah, I still find myself, butting in her favor even after everything. And my first thought is, well, most of the characters on Hell of a Boss are so awful that I kind of see that. Stella's vaguely amusing in her just over-the-top awful. But, I mean, I was a big Solus did nothing wrong stan in Dragon Age Inquisition. But I realized that was, again, another thing where so many of the characters were just so awful that at least Solus was being true to his nature as much as he possibly could. I mean, talk about another game franchise where it went from, you know, there are issues with some of the stuff, but the characters feel like characters instead of making a point somehow, or someone working out their odd Kunari fetish voiced by Freddie Prinze Jr. And, you know, I don't know. I'm just like, I'm going to sit in the corner with Solus because strangely to me, I cannot find a single lie he told, unlike a lot of the other characters in that game. And if the point is that characters lie to you, that's cool, right? But again, it went from this very earnest first couple of games where you really saw the point in even characters you disagreed with, like the Arashok, who were antagonists. You saw the nobility in his thinking there. And that was just gone for a lot of people. Cassandra was cool that way. But that was just gone in a lot of the characters in Inquisition. I mean, Iron Bolt, Blackwall. Dorian's a brat. I know people love Dorian, but he's a freaking brat, and it's kind of weird how him going back to Vinter and his abusive homophobic father is actually played for, well, this is just right and proper. I don't know, as it moves into Vilgard, that there's just been this ick for the last little bit in games, and maybe it is the sort of pointing and laughing element, because there is, I mean, devs get, especially AAA devs, get so freaking beat on that I can understand why they might be in their villain era. I don't know. But, you know, if we want better product, we have to stop assuming that every person who works for a AAA company is just, you know, evil incarnate. It's not helpful. Another comment. The mental gymnastics people do to avoid confronting anti-male thought has gotten scary. It's like listening to a crazy person sometimes, or maybe cultists would be the more apt. It's a repetition of cishet white men, cishet white men, cishet white men. Despite supposedly being against it, populist feminism has exploited the idea that trans, gay, queer, bi, and to a different extent, non-white men have nothing in common with men who are cisgendered, heterosexual, and white, driving a very effective rhetorical wedge between such men and carving the demographic apart for political benefit. The idea itself is just a rigid patriarchal gender norm. Those men are men, they're queer men, gay men, etc. The schema being that there are good men, bad men, and not men. At its most insidious, populist feminism reduces the schema down to just bad men and not men because good men are completely invisible. And from what you say here, it sounds like the feminist schema is good women and not women because there's no such thing as a bad woman. And I think that I would be considered a bad woman when I'm not a not woman among feminism, which is odd. People compare me in the same breath to somebody like a Christina Hoff Sommers. And it's interesting because we don't have, there is some overlap, but there's as much overlap there as, you know, some of the people that are far more left. The biggest issue with me is I just don't, I think that populist feminism, as the commenter called it, right now engages in this sort of brainless, read a pamphlet on socialism, that's what it is, type of underlying solution to the problems. And I mean, socialism isn't going to solve the fact that they're kicking girls out of school in Afghanistan right now. And there is this undeniable reality that bad men keep getting centered. And I wouldn't even call it good women, because I don't think under the current paradigm it is possible for women to be good. Women are obedient. We are proper. We are conformist. Goodness is not possible because goodness is earned. Whereas for women, we're born into a state of purity that we basically lose as we go on in life and gain experience. And so, yeah, I'm so far removed from being a proper and obedient and pure woman right now that I'm either a bad woman or not a woman at all. I think the not woman thing is much more what the whole kind of manosphere treats me as. Whereas, you know, I'm a woman for the purposes of them flinging insults at me, but in terms of, you know, my experience being one of a woman, no, I just don't rank. I'm just a straight up bad woman in feminist circles. I am a gender traitor. And my ideas are just, they come from me not seeing how horribly used I've been by various places, and I'm just brainwashed, and, you know, they're kind of afraid of me, and they definitely hate me. And that comes out in their very juvenile behavior towards me. And I find it interesting that so many people say, hey, have you reached out to this person? Have you reached out to that person? It's like, they haven't reached out to me. And why would I want to talk to someone whose first commentary on me was a cheap shot? That wouldn't be a ton of self-respect. I know that's how the internet works, but I don't really play that game. Let's move on to another comment. Okay, so the last two, one was about the desire demons. And yeah, excellent point, commenter, that focusing entirely on the sexiness of the model only scratches the surface of the point being made, namely that the fade was dangerous precisely because of multiple types of temptations through which demons could corrupt mortals to enter the world. This is maybe a time for another Dragon Age Origins playthrough. I don't know why BioWare has not done a remaster of Dragon Age Origins, because that game would stand up, probably because they'd have to nerf the desire demons. Never mind. But the commenter pointed out that the night that they show in one of the desire demon related quests is he got trapped in the fantasy of having a loving family, which Templars can't have. It had nothing to do with sex. Yeah, right. And I do think that the problem with a lot of this analysis is that people just focus on the sexual content when it comes to men, because there's this desire to just harness the male sex urge because they think it'll cut down on the abuse. And, you know, rape's not about sex, it's about power. And there are some people who go, no, it's about... No, you're wrong. Because sexy sex, part of the reason it feels good is you feel it's validating, you've earned it. When you take it by force, that's not there. That's just dominating someone. It's abusing them. And that's whether, you know, women are groping men or the other way around. Don't do that. Respect that other people's bodies are theirs. But yeah, I mean, desire is this poorly understood thing, because a lot of people in the West are actively discouraged from sort of embracing desire. And I was going to talk about the whole T thing in the whisper networks for women. Somebody commented on that. I may table that, but there isn't, because there isn't time in this video. But I do want to make a final comment on a lot of these comments. Artists shouldn't censor themselves, give explanation here. And I do want to defend artists who just don't want to die on certain hills. And I say this because I try very hard to be honest about my views and try to have discussions. But, you know, that whole Stop Killing Games debacle where I was like, fuck it, nope, I'm done, because it was just so nasty. I can't demand anyone else do something that was just too much for me. People have the right to say, you know what? It's just not worth the screaming and the name calling and the demonization and the people just not letting it go and following you to different places and just like bombing everything. And you have to feel really strongly about something to bother to run that gauntlet. And that's, you know, that's why I'm like, no, this is no better than these other things. People think this bad behavior is unavoidable. I don't agree. I think that if, you know, there's a better example set with this stuff and things are, if we work in a system that rewards a solid argument instead of the mob, it it leads to better everything. I really agree. It leads to more creative expression. You know, there's a difference between people taking issue with what you do and jumping to conclusions. And there being an obvious brigade against your content just because you're guilty of wrongthink. And I mean, my comments about stop killing games were so middle of the road that the reaction was quite noticeable. And you don't understand it, do research, you're stupid, you didn't look. Those are massive assumptions. And just because I didn't agree doesn't mean I don't look. And if you're a movement which is trying to persuade people instead of coerce people, if somebody doesn't understand your point, that is a failure on the end of the communicator. But that's not how it's seen. It's seen as this is important and we are right and we're going to bully anybody who doesn't agree with us and then get upset when they say you're being a bully. No, I'm not. I just care so much. Well, how is that any fucking different than the issues you don't agree with? It just, all of these online mobs kill free speech. All of them. Because, let's face it, if somebody's got this really cool idea about a game that brings people together, they're going to be more discouraged about doing it because, hey, they might have to spend a lot more money to completely retool it, or they're not going to be able to make that game in 5 or 6 years when this petition goes its way through. Oh, but that's not censoring content. Well, it is. If somebody wants to deliberately make something multiplayer only, because that's the point. It's about the experiences that you have with other people online. It's not a single thing that lasts forever. It's there, it's gone, it's a bright shining moment. That is a legitimate form of art. That is content. And that I believe strongly enough, because I don't have the money to make this shit. You know, I don't. Part of the reason that I couldn't get a game made is I just didn't have more money to throw at it after I paid people to do work they didn't do. So, and that is something I learned, is you have to have extra money in the budget for people flaking after they've, been paid and didn't do the work they were supposed to do. You have to have some in reserve. And, these things are too expensive and it's too much work and it's too long to go, oh, just don't censor yourself. Take the screaming, take the bullying, take people tracking down your academic consultants to harass them too. You can't ask somebody who just wants to make a fun product to do that. And if you really, and I believe this very strongly, if you truly believe that censorship is bad, you will not join pile-ons. You will not join gang-ups. You will not resort to insults about someone's intelligence and assume they didn't look into things, because I know the minute people are like, you didn't do this, you didn't do that, you didn't inform yourself. It's like, guys, do you think the very reason I said don't send me to hour-long videos is I already watched the hour-long fucking videos? And I said to people, yeah, there were multiple contradictions in the first 20 minutes of those videos. And they go, yeah, obviously I watched the videos. Don't do that if you don't believe censorship has a place. Because that is censorship by mob. Not just, I don't agree with your position, you're stupid and lazy. What does that do other than just silence a person? Don't do that. You can't do that and then claim you're anti-censorship. I mean, these groups, the reason I'm not talking about collective shout and all that stuff is because they are just pro censorship. There's no contradiction in their position. This kind of stuff matters. How you fight a fight matters. How you make your case matters. It really, really does. And it's up to all of us to take responsibility for how we conduct ourselves when we don't like something. Because I talk to a lot of writers and a lot of artists and like really good professional ones who are pretty tough, but it's still not enough. And they are all walking wounded because of this shit. This shit hurts. This shit reduces productivity. It frightens people. It depresses them. And it means that we are getting less creativity, not more. And you can think you're 100% right about something, but the most important thing, the most persuasive thing you can do if you think you're right about something is listen. And because I know I listened to a lot of that, when people are like, you're uninformed, you didn't do this, you didn't look into it, I knew that was bullshit. And the minute you make a false accusation of someone, you've lost them. You're not going to persuade them anymore, because if you're wrong about that assumption, what else are you wrong about? This stuff matters. And I am very anti-censorship. Just as a first principle, you know, I say things like, well, because it affects minorities and you know, marginalized groups the most, but that's just an a posteriori justification. I just don't like anybody telling people what they can say or can't say. Disagree with it all you want. Have consequences for the behavior. But one thing I believe in is people should say what they want. Second thing I believe in is I should be able to avoid it if I want. Because that is another part of freedom of expression. Freedom of expression and freedom from expression both have to exist for either to really exist. Because otherwise you get a situation where nobody can say anything, or most people can't say anything because a loud, empowered minority is shouting everyone else down. And the loud, empowered minority shouting everybody else down is what's happening in gaming right now. Help support this channel. Become a monthly patron, patreon.com/Leanna K. Or buy a one-time Leanna Care session for someone who can use it but can't afford it, coffee.com/Leanna K. Thanks for watching. Like and subscribe if you like this content and don't have money to throw at me. And have a great weekend.